Well, we would invite all who are prepared to join us in the recitation of the Lord's Prayer, followed by a moment of silence. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and glory forever. Amen. It is now 7 o'clock. Shelby City Council meeting is called to order. I invite you to join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Be seated, please. Roll call, please, Mr. Crum.
Mr. Robb. Here. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Gates. Here. Mr. Martin.
Here.
Mr. McLaughlin. Here.
For the record, Mr. Roberts is missing this evening for medical reasons. I'll entertain a motion to excuse Councilman Roberts.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Robb. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Robb.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Yay. That motion to excuse passes. I will now entertain a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal from October the 3rd, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robb and a second by Mr. Gates to dispense with the reading of the journal from October 3rd, 2022. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Robb.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Yay. That motion passes. Now come to the time for public comment. If there's anyone who has a comment they'd like to make to City Council this evening, or maybe some public comment has been received by email, this would be the time to share public comment. Hearing and seeing none, we move forward into reports from standing and special committees. Finance and Personnel Committee met. Councilman Gates.
Thank you, Mayor. The committee met last Thursday. Copies of the report are distributed to council members. We'll turn to the back page and look at city income tax receipts. The chart at the top is year to date. We can see that as of the end of September, the city income tax revenues were slightly over $5 million. The quote from the finance director is that has never happened. As we can look back for the previous years and see that closest we came the last year was $4.9 million, and previous years it was significantly less. So we know we have an outlier or two, but nonetheless it's over $5 million. Looking down below, the finance director described the revenues for September, $337,000 as being a respectable month. So that's the income tax. Let's take a look at the second page, and we'll get a little bit more detail about the income tax, just how it splits out. I'm sorry, I think the yes, the second page, I'm sorry. Down at the bottom, we can see that individual tax revenue has been $900,000. That's up 22% over the 30-year average. Business, $1.6 million, again, that's because the outliers, that percentage there is so fantastic as to be meaningless. Withholding, however, that is the closest number we have to real time. That is what is withheld from employees and remitted to the city on a regular basis. And we have $2,530,000, which is up 19% over the 3-year average. So we would love if those figures would remain strong and become the norm as opposed to the exception. But it is what it is for this year, and we're happy to have that. Let's take a look at the front page. Beginning, at the top, we have the general fund, $2,768,000. Encumbrances of $167,000, so $2.6 million free and clear as of the end of September. Moving down the page, we can see the health fund, $489,000. The park, very healthy at $544,000. But there's a reason for that, is that the $500,000 that the commissioners contributed for the Black Fork Commons Plaza is in that figure. So that's an exception to that, an explanation for why that figure is so high. Moving down, we can see the capital improvements. $207,000 in cash, $134,000 encumbered, leaving $73,000. That's good. We have capital improvements fund to make capital improvements. We don't want to squirrel that money away when there are definite capital improvement needs for the city. Moving down, look at the 3 utilities. Free and clear in the sewer fund, $59,000. In the water fund, $66,000, and in the electric fund, $3,774,000. Dropping down to the hospitalization fund, we have $555,930 there. We learned that what our insurance rates are going to be for healthcare next year, and roughly a 14% increase. That is that's high for us, but for quite a few years we have had increases in the single digits. I remember maybe 4 or so years ago, our colleagues in the city of Mansfield, their healthcare jumped 30%, and ours was minimal. As I shared at the meeting, I would run into my colleagues over in Mansfield and I'd keep my head down and not make eye contact. Again, when you look over a period of years, yeah, 14% is high now, but if you look at an average, it's still reasonable. Going back to the second page, at the top we can see that with the total budget that revenues have exceeded expenditures this year. If we look at the general fund, likewise, we can see that revenues have exceeded expenditures. Part of that, of course, is because of the exceptional income tax revenues we've had, and the large percentage of that is transferred into the general fund. Going on to the next page, utilities. Looking at the utilities for 2022, we can see that all 3 utilities have had a decrease where expenditures are exceeding revenues. $44,000 in the water fund, wastewater, $147,000 in the water fund, and $73,000 in the electric fund. The electric fund, of course, that's not a surprise. We are intentionally trying to bring that amount down to an optimum level. Water and sewer continue to be a concern. Looking at the cash investment and reconciliation statement, total investments are $6,800,000. Total checking, $10.3 million, for a total in the city treasury as of the end of last month, $17,102,267.85. The Sutter Roush fund is attached there. A slight drop there over the year. Present at the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting was Fire Chief Thompson. He shared with us information about a demo squad that is available. We'll talk about that later as legislation comes up. We have a new ambulance, new squad vehicle on order, but its delivery is not until October of 2024, 2 years off from now. So just in short, we have an opportunity to get a squad now rather than wait for 2 years. Mayor, you updated about personnel issues in the fire department. There were 7 applications received for lateral transfers. We heard that 5 of them are really good applications, and that all these individuals are medics, which is what we need in the department at present. In the police department, we have a patrol officer whose last day is yesterday, the 17th. We have a dispatcher who's departed. A candidate has been given a tentative offer for hire. You had reported there was a dispatcher candidate who sat with the dispatcher to get a real feel for what is doing, so that this candidate can have a more realistic knowledge if he or she really wishes to have that job. So we learned that the water treatment plant is fully staffed. Looking at possible levies for next year, the street income tax levy is up for next year. So, Mayor, that's a quick report from Finance and Personnel. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them or to defer them to the Finance Director.
Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Gates in regard to his report?
And Mayor, if my colleague, Mr. Martin, has anything to add, by all means.
Okay.
Mayor, I would move that the combined financial statement and the cash investment reconciliation statement, both dated 30th of September 2022, be received, placed on file, and posted to the city's website.
Second. We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin that the combined financial statement and the cash investment reconciliation statement, both dated September 30th, 2022, be received, placed on file, and posted to the city website. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Robb?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yeah.
That motion passes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gates.
You're very welcome.
We are now coming up to the Utilities and Streets Committee. Councilman Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Utilities and Streets Committee met on October 13th as well, and we discussed various topics here. First, some good news. Yay. Shelby electric rates are projected to be stable next year. There are a lot of news articles out there about electric rates that are increasing in areas throughout the state and the country, and of course these are accurate reports. However, the way that we've structured our long-term deals, unless something drastic happens, so I guess we're putting a major caveat there, but example, if we lose a large customer, generators fail, et cetera, the electric rates for Shelby should remain stable for the next several years. If the forecast stays true to the design, the projected rates will be stable through 2030. Of course, there's a lot of ifs in there, but when we, in July 2019, when we negotiated our deal with AEP, we hedged and negotiated lower rates for additional years. And doing that has brought a reduction for the cost per megawatt in the 2020 to 2022 contract years of a 10.1% reduction, and 2023 to 2030 provides a 9.1% reduction. It's a one-time reduction, and then the rate remains fixed. AEP supplies Shelby with the energy above our AMP contracts. So obviously, AMP is the larger piece, and the AEP is the smaller piece. And so that's some good news and some fortuitous negotiation on those contracts. Kudos all the way around for that. All right, now to the not so great news. Chemical costs. This is a follow-up from our September discussion. But our chemical line balance, we projected that we would be okay through the end of the year, but we are going to need a little additional because of it's a projected shortfall with our current balance. So we are planning to transfer some monies out of the reservoir chemical lines because we didn't need as much there. And we are planning to transfer, hoping to transfer $50,000 from the general fund ARPA to the water fund. This will provide us sufficient funds and get us through hopefully until I think January or February, so that the PCA adjuster can take place and take care of that. So that's just an update on that. More to come via legislation on that. Everyone from council should have gotten their email. The PowerPoint includes updated chemical charts. The chemicals are rising basically by the month, so they are updated to reflect that. Next thing we discussed, a large portion of our discussion was around the consumer price index adjustment. In the chapter 1040, the rules and regulations that go through this, Rule 43 states that if there's an automatic adjustment based off of the CPI from the previous year, that adjustment, though, is capped at 3%. Now, the issue for specifically water and sewer funds, the issue is that January 2022, it should have been a 7.3% increase. It was capped at 3%. And we're projecting an 8.7% increase this year. And so we keep on falling further and further behind inflation. So we're looking at some legislative fixes to that. One possible fix, of course, would be just to get rid of the cap and we follow the CPI. But then the question becomes, okay, what if, it was 3.2% or something that was negligible? Or what if the CPI was rising in areas that didn't necessarily cause an output? Like, for example, what if chemicals were actually going down, but food overall was going up and affecting the CPI? And so wanted to have some kind of council involvement. So we're just batting some legislation around. We'll have some legislation for council to kind of remedy this, and we'll have further discussions when that legislation comes about. All right, street and sidewalk levy was touched upon previous report. We passed a levy in 2018. That levy collects 0.2% income tax for maintaining the roadways and sidewalk repair. 97% of the collections go to the roadways and 3% to the sidewalk repair. That term is a 5-year levy, and that ends on December 31st of 2023. So we'll have to put a renewal on the ballot next year. So we are looking at putting that levy, submitting that levy for the May 2023 primary election. And that means that we have to get going here pretty quick, actually, to make that happen. So I expect to see legislation on that as well. Natural gas aggregation update. Natural gas aggregation program is once again going to be provided to the community. We recently entered into an agreement with Constellation New Energy Gas Division, Constellation, to be the community's natural gas aggregation provider. That agreement was executed on September 23rd. Jay Stell, who is our energy consultant, with Aspen Energy, provided the necessary information and direction for the best pricing for the natural gas. True to form, he kind of nailed it. He said that we would get a better rate if we waited to the fall. And indeed, it looks like we have. It's about 5.05 cents lower than the lowest like offer on the state's apple-to-apple comparisons. So, everybody can kind of look at that. The website, apples-to-apples.utilityrates.com. And that's apples-to-apples.utilityrates.com. I don't know what the other site will go to, but better sign of caution, make sure you put those hyphens in, I guess. Constellation will be sending out enrollment notification forms to area residents, similar to when we had the other program. Customers are automatically enrolled if they are currently in the standard choice program. Customers can opt out at any time with no penalty, and they can opt in at any time with no cost. So that's that. Mayor, the leaves are changing. Soon the leaves will be falling. And when they fall, we have to somehow collect them. So the service department is tentatively scheduled to start picking up leaves on Monday, October 24th. They could start earlier if possible. That collection process will run through the month of November. Notices, of course, on the city website, Nixle, police Facebook page, etc., etc. As always, please rake your leaves to the curb. Make sure that you don't have any foreign material in those leaves piles, rocks, limbs, materials, or small children. Parking a vehicle on or in front of the leaf piles to be picked up should be avoided from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. Please don't bag the leaves and don't place the leaves in our streets, of course. Don't want that going to our storm water system. And don't place the leaves close to a mailbox, pole, or guide wire utility pole. So typical rules. There is big change this year, however. The drop-off site behind the community gardens is no longer available. So we will not be allowing drop-offs there. The reason being is that they were receiving a lot of garbage at the site. So we're kind of having to shut that down because, well, people were dropping off things that weren't leaves. So, leaf pickup is upon us. So, Mayor, that's my report.
Thank you, Councilman Martin. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Martin in regard to his report? Thanks once again. Come to the Safety Committee. Councilman Roberts is not here this evening, but as I understand that Councilman Gates will be giving that report in his absence.
Yes, Mayor. The committee met on the 5th of this month. We heard that Richland County Emergency Management Agency is looking for a new director. That's the responsibility of the county commissioners to name that person. From the fire department, The chief told us that he is working on hiring. He had been in touch with the Civil Service Commission, which was going to meet on October 13th, last Thursday. It was a busy afternoon and evening at City Hall. October 13th, of course, was the takeover date to run transport at midnight. Chief shared with us concerns about extra room and how to house additional personnel and additional equipment. The health department reported that there are 2 nuisances on file with the law director for prosecution. There was a second positive test for the West Nile virus in the northern end of the 3rd ward, but it is now too cool to spray for mosquitoes, and with the temperatures we're getting, the mosquitoes will be soon gone. Richland County Emergency Management Agency reported to the health department that they have quite a supply of PPE that they are willing to share. Our on-staff nurse reported that in September there were 59 cases of COVID reported, 2 cases of hepatitis C, 3 cases of chlamydia, 0 cases of gonorrhea. There were 40 birth certificates reported and 23 death certificates for the month of September. The police chief gave quite a detailed presentation with quite a thick packet of materials regarding the staffing situation in the department. There are 21 staff members authorized for the department, but at the time of the meeting there were 14 actual, including two school resource officers. The chief held a mandatory meeting, staff meeting, on September 19th, and to explain the situation. The concern, of course, is to provide coverage on all the shifts, and at the same time to minimize the use of overtime. To make a long story short, the chief did implement an 8-hour shift proposal, which provides minimum coverage for most shifts and on most days, and also with a minimum of overtime. There are 2 candidates have been interviewed, and offers were made to perhaps tentative offers, I should say, for a patrol officer and for a dispatcher. We learned that there is no other LEA, law enforcement agency, in and around Richland County that does 12-hour shifts. So, very similar to in the fire service, where we were the only department, save and except Norwalk, that did not transport. We've learned that we're the only one, only other LEA who has 12-hour shifts. Personal aside, if 12-hour shifts were the way to operate a police department, everyone would be doing it, or at least a majority would be doing it. It's certainly something that we need to take a very serious look the next time we have negotiations with the FOP. Mayor, that concludes the report from the Safety Committee.
Thank you, Councilman Gates. Are there any comments or questions from Councilman Gates in regard to his report? All right, hearing none, then we'll move forward to reports of city officials. I'll give my report from the Office of the Mayor. The last couple of weeks I've been occupied with daily mayoral duties. October the 4th, I helped facilitate our monthly Board of Health meeting. We were happy to view for the first time our national accreditation plaque from the Public Health Accreditation Board. And as you can see, this is very impressive. We're going to be, I'm going to pass it around, just handle it carefully. We'll be displaying this in front of our health department office area. So it's a beautiful plaque, but representative of thousands of hours invested in receiving accreditation from this national board. On October the 5th, Chief Combs and I conducted 2 interviews, as Mr. Gates alluded to, one for patrol officer, the other for a dispatcher position. And indeed, I have signed the 2 conditional offers of employment for those individuals. On October the 8th, we held a ribbon cutting event for the Marigold Bakery at 67 West Main Street. And as always, it was a joyous time for the family and friends who gathered for this celebratory occasion. On October the 10th, I met with my fellow Richland County mayors in Ontario for our monthly mayor's luncheon. As always, it was a good meeting with a sharing of ideas and experiences. On October 13th, I participated in as a board member in a Zoom meeting of the Community Action Commission of Erie, Huron, and Richland County. On October the 13th, I was present at the Shelby YMCA for the opening day of the LifeWise Academy here in Shelby. And backing up a bit, on October the 6th, Miss Jessica Gribben, our Economic Development Liaison, received a prestigious award. At the annual meeting of the Ohio Economic Development Association held in Dublin, Ohio, not only did Ms. Gribben receive her Ohio CED certification, but she was also recognized as the statewide, they call it Rookie of the Year, for all of her work. This award was delayed in its presentation by COVID-19 effects, so as Mr. Barrett Thomas stated, we'll call her the newish professional of the year. And I think we all agree that we are tremendously blessed to have Ms. Gribben working hard for the city of Shelby on a daily basis. So we join many, many others in congratulating her on this wonderful award. So, gentlemen, that concludes my report. Are there any comments or questions for me? All right. If not, we'll move forward to Mr. Crum, Director of Finance.
Thank you, sir. As always, Mr. Gates did a fabulous job with the number side of things. Mostly normal routine tasks around my office. Spent time trying to figure out how to pay for an ambulance and keep the water fund in balance. It is that time of year where things, we start to get kind of close to what we have appropriated. And so the funds need a lot of attention as far as, okay, well, what can't we do? So that's taking some time. Today was the extended tax return due date, which didn't result in a terrible amount of extra stress or anything. I don't really have any exciting news either way about that. We're still working through the audit. Well, actually, both audits. The overall financials and the health department has an individual audit every other year. Working through those. Nothing else too out of the ordinary. I will say November 1st through 3rd, I'll probably be out of the office. Other than that, I don't really have anything else there. That's my report.
Mr. Crum, are there any comments or questions for Mr. Crum in regard to his report? Hearing none, come to the time for Mr. Eister, Law Director. He is not able to be here this evening, again, medical reasons. Mr. Joe Geis, Project Coordinator.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few project updates. They're continuing on the downtown streetscape. They are planning to have all the curbs around their board and then a huge board in the center of that intersection on this Thursday. So then the asphalt goes back in and the bricks, and hopefully we can get that open back up relatively soon. But, that's good to hear. And then Black Fork Commons, they've stripped off all the topsoil and started to work on the foundations for any different structures than need goes around there, so that's going on nicely.
That's all I have. All right. Thank you, Mr. Geis. Are there any comments or questions from Mr. Geis in regard to his report? All right, hearing none, we'll move forward to new business. Is there any new business to be brought before council this evening? Hearing none, move forward to unfinished business. We have on the agenda the former ice plant property. We did have a conversation with Ms. Griffin here today, and there are some things going on behind the scenes, and hopefully we'll be able to announce something here in the near future, but nothing public at this point. Is there any other unfinished business? Mr. Gates?
Mayor, when is Mrs. Grimmons scheduled to attend council meeting next?
We just talked about that. I think the first meeting, if she wants to wrap things up, maybe the first meeting in November or December, kind of give a year-end report. So maybe December would be a better time to give a year-end report.
And then when she's here, she can give the council more details about the ice plant property.
I would think that would be very, very possible. Mr. Martin?
I know we had taken the old fire station off the unfinished business, but it does seem that it probably needs to go back on there. It's going to be unfinished business again with the ambulance service going out.
Mr. Crum, you do note that, please?
I certainly will.
Thank you.
To that effect, do you have any updates on their vacating that property and where we're at currently?
Chief, we speak to that issue of the old fire station and what has been done there.
Sure. Went down, did a walkthrough with Superior. Building's empty. We got heat up, about 50 degrees in there. The water's been disconnected. We pulled the backflow preventer in the meter just in case something would happen with the heat. Didn't want much damage from freezing water lines. It's an easy fix to get it back up and running. So everything went really smooth. Pretty peaceful transition, and again, our guys have really stepped up. They're working a lot now to get through till we get some people hired, so I'm really proud of it. But we have building secure, and as I remember, I'll stop down and try to check in on it every now and again, and go from there.
Thank you. Very good. And another unfinished business. Hearing none, let's move to ordinances. Mr. Crum.
Ordinance number 23, 2022, amending ordinance number 3, 2022, annual appropriations and declaring an emergency.
I move that the rule requiring that an ordinance be read on 3 separate occasions be suspended.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin that the rule requiring that an ordinance be read on 3 separate occasions be suspended. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay. That motion passes.
Move for the passage of the ordinance. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Martin and a second by Mr. McLaughlin for the passage of ordinance number 23, 2022. Discussion. Mr. Gates.
Mayor, would the finance director give us an explanation, please?
I'd be happy to. Okay, we have 3 kind of different topics on this legislation. The first of which involves the transfer capital improvement of $70,000, and then the service vehicle line of $70,000. That is for this demo ambulance that we have legislation for later this evening. It is a little more expensive than the one we have on order because, well, it was built with some extras that we had originally ordered. And so in order to fund that, we'll have to move money out of the general fund, which we can kind of consider the monies formerly known as ARPA. So we'd have to transfer money to the 300 fund, and then we could add that to the balance to expend for that purpose. The other easy one is the 402 SIF 536 construction line item for $165,000. That's also with legislation tonight. Is that Broadway sewer? That's actually a grant that we're getting. We have the funds appropriated for our half, but the matching part, I didn't have appropriated. I think it's actually a little higher than it was. So it's going to be money coming in and going out. It's not going to affect our bottom line, but I needed to increase the line item to account for that. Okay, the other two line items are a transfer miscellaneous of $50,000 from the general fund, and that will be going to the water fund, and then adding $50,000 to the chemicals line in the water fund. Before we get too involved, I've been having some discussions with Mr. Ensman. Since this originally came up, with the weather change, our chemical usage has gone down a little bit. And we've already transferred some funds throughout the fund that I'm allowed to do without council's approval to bump that fund up. And then in probably in the next meeting, we'll have legislation to transfer about $8,000 from the reservoir chemicals to this, because we won't need any more chemicals that year, or this year. So we're beefing up the account in other means. We're still going to be a little short. We originally thought it was going to be about $50,000. After our conversations, it's probably going to be about $25,000. So we could reduce that chemicals line to 25 from 50, if you guys so choose. It would be close, but I think we could do it. There's definitely concern about the balance in that account. And that's why we had originally chosen to move funds out of the general fund. Obviously, nobody wants to do that. You know, the enterprise funds are supposed to be self-sufficient. It's been a very weird year. As Mr. Martin spoke in his report, you know, the consumer price index is moving a lot higher than our ability to keep up with it. And as all of our expenses have gone up, that's made that fund very tight. We'll say the fund has kind of, I don't want to say leveled out, but the balance hasn't changed in the last couple months. We've still been down that roughly $150,000 for the year. I'm hoping that I know the majority of the cost adjuster won't kick in until next year, but talking with Mr. Ensman, we do kind of expect it to go up a little bit in the end of the year. I think that we could potentially cover it with unappropriated funds, because I think our revenues might be a little higher than we'd originally guessed. So, I shouldn't say guessed, calculated. So if we wanted, we could potentially table that transfer from the general fund and see how things go, and just increase the chemical line item, because I think that our revenues are going to be high enough that we'll have enough money in the funds to account for 25 grand. You know, that's a lot of numbers in a brief period. So my thoughts are we could probably get by with 25,000 in the chemical line items at 50. If you wanted to postpone the transfer miscellaneous line item of 50,000, we could probably do that and see how things go in the next couple of months.
Mr. Martin?
My thought is to leave it as is for a couple reasons. The PCA adjuster, like I was talking about, won't go into effect even when it hits at the end of the year. It actually won't go into effect until the February bill, which means that we won't see it until the March bill. So, you know, we're going to be in that, you know, hopefully everything works out well, but I think it's prudent for us to be a little more cautious with that. but we obviously don't want to try to take it down to the bare bones. So I'm of the mind that we need to leave it as it is constructed here.
Mr. Gates?
Mayor, I have real concerns, and the finance director touched on that, about using tax dollars to prop up the and enterprise fund, in this particular case, the water fund. Enterprise funds, as we know, are supposed to operate as a business, that they are to have sufficient revenues to cover their expenses. I just philosophically opposed to using tax dollars to prop up a revenue fund or an enterprise fund. I think it's the beginning of a slippery slope.
Mr. Martin?
Well, these monies are coming out of the funds formerly known as ARPA funds, which, as we know, is supposed to go to possible lost revenue, and specifically ARPA said that lost revenue in enterprise funds, and we've documented this on numerous occasions that the water and sewer funds experienced heavy loss during COVID-19. To the tune of, close to $65,000, so if not more. So for us to transfer $50,000 from that designation, I definitely, I am in agreement. Under normal circumstances, we should do this, but I don't believe it's a slippery slope because, again, it's from those ARPA funds. Those ARPA funds were specifically designed and granted for loss of revenue. And that is something that won't happen perpetually in the future to create the slippery slope. So I think that it's prudent also for us to document that and talk about that so that future councils don't feel the need to use tax funds willy-nilly. So I do appreciate Mr. Gates bringing up that point so we can document that publicly, that's our reasoning behind doing it, because I do feel that that's important for the public to know, that it's not just a transfer of funds. It is specifically those ARPA funds for a specific reason, because there's a specific need. So that's why I think it's prudent for us to go this route versus the other route would be for us to raise rates to account for that gap, because there's going to be a gap. Between now and when that PCA adjuster, which is designed to cover that gap, takes effect, there's going to be a gap. So, we certainly could go the route of raising rates, but I believe we got the ARPA funds for a reason, and to utilize those in a specific way to avoid us having to raise rates and then potentially having to decrease them in 4 or 5 months is the prudent course of action here.
Mr. Gates?
I'd like to make an amendment to the ordinance that after the last financial line in section 1 to add this language, the monies transferred from the general fund to the water fund shall be returned in 2023.
We have that written down. We have a second. We have a second for the motion on the floor.
Point of inquiry. Could we repeat that with the motion to amend? Sorry.
to amend in section 1 that the monies transferred from the general fund to the water fund shall be returned in 2023. That is the motion.
I will second, so we can have a discussion.
Yes, a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin. The monies transferred from the general fund to the water fund shall be returned in 2023. Discussion. Here, Ms. Martin.
I would just like to hear from the finance director, possibly Mr. Insman, on what that looks like to the fund's outcomes.
I guess that's a good question. I know that prior to me being here, I think that one of the utilities funds borrowed monies from, I can't remember who or somebody. So, you know, they pay it back every year. It's, you know, yeah, the end of the year balance would be a little higher in the water fund, and lower in the general fund. And theoretically, after the PCA adjuster kicks in, the balance should go up and the fund should be available.
Mr. Martin.
I would like to hear from Councilman Gate on his, the thought process on that, pushing out to 2023. I'd like to hear his point of view on
Mr. Gates.
Mayor, as I had said, I'm philosophically opposed to using tax dollars to prop up an enterprise fund. Now, although we use the phrase, the funds formerly known as ARPA monies, these are in the general fund. So we can, you know, and I'm as guilty as anyone else of using that phrase, but they still are general fund monies. So with my amendment, if it passes, I am comfortable voting for the passage of this ordinance.
Mr. Martin.
Well, I think that amendment gives us the ability to accomplish what we need to in the short term without raising rates, and gives us the flexibility for, in 2023, if we see trends going in a certain direction, that we can adjust it then. So I'm comfortable voting for the amendment.
Any further discussion on that motion to amend section 1 with the language of the monies transferred from the general fund to the water fund shall be returned in 2023. Any further discussion? That is the motion to amend. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Nay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
The motion to amend passes. Any further discussion? If I may, please, with that motion that passed, I'm wondering if it may be prudent, as Mr. Crum said, maybe to change that figure to 25,000. You say we could maybe just transfer?
Mayor, a point of order. I believe you're
Okay.
entering into debate rather than just presenting information.
I'll hand my seat over to the chair, to the vice chairman here, Mr. McLaughlin, if you would take the chair for a moment, please. Okay, thank you. So I was just saying, maybe for council's consideration, if that will be returned, maybe the 25,000 is more manageable for 2023. That's just something for council to entertain. Okay?
The issue is I think we're going to be very tight this year. But again, that PCA adjuster we will not see the money from that PCA adjuster until March. And I don't want to get in a situation where we're having, if we don't need the money, then obviously that can be paid back in January 2023. The remainder of that 25,000 can be paid throughout 2023, as the amendment states. But I don't want to have to come back and do this exact same thing in late December or January because, we were off by a couple $1,000s, which is a potential. We don't know, and chemical prices are still not going down. So I certainly would feel comfortable doing the 50,000, doing it as essentially a loan, and then dealing with all that in 2023 as we have a little more breathing room. And so I definitely, I just think that's the best course of action.
Mr. Mayor?
Point well taken, and I just think we just need to keep close track of what funds are being used where towards the end of this year, so we know exactly what's being repaid in 2023. Okay, so I understand. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Mr. Martin?
What we've gone through the past 15 minutes is a clear example of getting everybody around the table to be comfortable with where we're at. I feel comfortable in this, and you know what, if we need to deal with this in 2023, we're able to do so with breathing room, and I certainly encourage all my colleagues to vote for it as amended.
Further discussion? Mr. Mayor?
I'm going to take my chair back.
We have a
Thank you, sir.
motion come out of committee of the whole.
We weren't in the.
Yeah, we
Oh, we
did. I
will.
just handed you
You just hand up.
the chair for a while. Thank you, sir. Any further discussion on the ordinance number 23, 2022? We're voting on the main motion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Ordinance number 23, 2022 passes.
Ordinance number 24, 2022. Amending section 1026.03, trimming of trees required of chapter 1026, street trees of the codified ordinances of the city of Shelby, Ohio.
Move for first reading.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Martin and a second by Mr. McLaughlin for the first reading of ordinance number 24, 2022. Discussion? Mr. Geis.
In this ordinance existing, it states I think it says the street department superintendent, the one after being notified by in the middle of that section. Since we now have a code enforcement officer, that language is added in there, or designee. That way, sometimes it's a little difficult. The superintendent is working on other things. The code enforcement officer is out there doing these things anyhow, so that's what's added in this ordinance.
Mr. Martin.
It also brings this particular section up to kind of the standard that we see other places where the code enforcement officer is able to do their duties, but specifically with the or designee language. So it just brings it up to snuff, so to speak.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Gates.
I recall from decades ago that there was some case law that said that when we mow or we trim trees or whatever, we are allowed to bill for the cost. And those costs can include the administrative costs. The problem we have, and I'll do some more research here, is twice we see the word penalty in here. Penalties are levied by judges, and I think, maybe a distinction without a difference, but I think we need to perhaps change that word to administrative cost or some such thing like that to take care of that word penalty. I remember from that case that they were very clear. Penalties are levied by judges for criminal offenses. Civil matters, there may be a cost, but not a penalty.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion for the first reading? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Ordinance number 24, 2022 passes its first reading.
Resolution number 57, 2022, accepting the gift of certain historical artifacts from Jonathan C. Elgin, Esquire, to the city of Shelby.
Move the resolution be taken up and passed.
Second.
Mr. McLaughlin may have got you there. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. McLaughlin for the passage of resolution number 57, 2022. Discussion.
Mayor, would the clerk read the resolution, please?
Resolution number 57, 2022, sponsor Councilmember Gates, accepting the gift of certain historical artifacts from Jonathan C. Elgin, Esquire, to the city of Shelby. Whereas attorney Jonathan C. Elgin, Esquire, recently purchased the building and contents of the building previously occupied by Poland, Depler, and Shepherd Co., LPA, and while sorting through the materials left in the building, discovered a number of legal artifacts that are likely the last in existence. And whereas, because of their historical value, Attorney Elgin wishes to donate these artifacts to the city of Shelby. And whereas, it is in the interest of public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the citizens of the city of Shelby that the gift of said legal artifacts be accepted in order to guarantee their preservation. Now therefore, be it resolved by the council of the city of Shelby, Ohio, a majority electing thereto concurring, Section 1, that the gift of the following legal artifacts of historical significance from attorney Jonathan C. Elgin to the city of Shelby shall be and is hereby accepted. A, the charter and ordinances of the general and permanent nature of the city of Shelby, Ohio, referred to as the 1923 Code in the current codified ordinances of the city of Shelby. B, 2 copies of the Charter of the City of Shelby, Ohio, second printing, April 1, 1941. And C, Charter and Code of Ordinances of the City of Shelby, General Ordinances of the City effective July 1, 1958, the personal copy of F. Herbert Pullman, the former late Director of Law. Section 2, that the council, on behalf of the city and its residents, express both its thanks and its gratitude to Attorney Elgin for his thoughtful gift. Section 3, that the president of council and the clerk of council and their successors in office be directed to preserve said historical artifacts in perpetuity. Section 4, that all meetings and hearings concerning the adoption of this resolution have been in compliance with the codified ordinance 220.01, Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22, and the Charter of the City of Shelby. Section 5, that this resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval by the mayor, and in the earliest period allowed by law.
Mr. Gates.
Attorney Elgin is present, Mayor. Perhaps you would like to address council and actually present those artifacts.
Thank you. Well, as the resolution indicated, I purchased Tom Depler's building, 6 Water Street. We are fully moved in there, despite not having a sign. It's been on order for 3 months. So someday there'll be a sign out. Poland, Depler, and Shepherd served the city of Shelby for 99 years. And they retired in 1919. As you likely know, the city of Shelby's been a city for 100 years this year. So their law firm was in existence prior to the city being a city. In going through 100 years worth of stuff, there was lots of outdated materials that we threw away, but in sorting through them, we found some important items that were referenced there. I think the most rare being the original charter and ordinances, the first printing that were authorized in 1923 by our second law director. Shelby had 2 law directors in its first year as city. But that contains the entire ordinance, history of the city, and the original ordinances for the first year we were a city. Likely the only copy of that in existence. 2 copies of the second printing, they were made in the 40s, still fairly rare. And then 1958, the Code of Ordinances. This was Herb Poland's personal copy, has a lot of proposed legislation, handwritten notes, and even a case that he tore out of a case reporter at one time, doing his work as the law director. Most interestingly, Herb kept scrupulous records of everything that went on in the city. One of which being the salaries in 1957, and by far the highest paid employee in the city was the general manager of public utilities, who was more than 2 times the city law director, more than 2 times the city mayor, and more than twice the municipal court judge. So there's lots of interesting history in here. It's probably the only copies. That's why I wanted to leave it in good, safe hands with the city. And thank you for entertaining that offer. So.
Thank you, Mr. Elgin. Tell you what, could we get a picture maybe of you presenting those to us and the council if you'd like to go? You stretch a little bit anyways. Who can take a picture? Well, you should be out here. Joe will get a picture. If you would just join me around here, gentlemen, we'll just have JC and we'll get around here. Speak for posterity. Yeah,
We should have the president council on one side and the clerk on the other.
There we go. And Councilman, did you get around here? You can come around. Oh, you'll be able to see them all right? All right, so we'll put your hand on that a little bit here and then we'll get back to where we see. Okay, there we go.
All right, I think I got everyone here. Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Elgin. Thank you so much for thinking of us, and I will give these to the clerk and just say, thank you for treasuring these gifts of the past, and we'll try to hold on them for the posterity in the future here. So thank you so much. All right. Mr. Gates.
The items A and B I had seen before, and but item C, the code of 1958, that hard volume book, I had never seen that before. So that is particularly rare.
It's good stuff.
Mr. Elgin somewhat teased us. I'll share with my colleagues that back in 1958, the salary of our predecessors was $40 a month.
Oh. Okay. Interesting observation, Mr. Martin.
All right, a couple of note-keeping things. I'm assuming, well, does this need to be an emergency so that we can take immediate possession of these? That'd be my first question. And then second, there are some items in column C that are not specifically listed, so I'm wondering if we need to amend that to include and its contents. So those are questions. I don't know if this resolution is more symbolic than it is a legal necessity, but if it is indeed a legal necessity, then we would probably need to attend to those two things.
Mr. Gates.
Mayor, there's a saying, and I would say, normally I say the attorneys, but the attorney in the room would the possession is 9/10 of the law. So, I imagine they'll go into the vault tomorrow at City Hall.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with
But the question that the member raises is a good one.
that. I think we're all right the way it is. We'll take good care of everything. All right. Thank you for bringing those up. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Barton?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Resolution number 57, 2022 passes.
Resolution number 58, 2022, authorizing the mayor as Director of Public Service to enter into contract change order with Simonson Construction Services, Inc. for the Black Fork Commons project in the amount of $8,028.29 as an increase and declaring an emergency.
Will the resolution take and pass?
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Martin and a second by Mr. McLaughlin for the passage of resolution number 58, 2022. Discussion? Mr. Geis.
Thank you, Mayor. While the contractor was out there working, he did notice that the curbs on the west side of the plaza area are not in very good shape. So they thought of doing this nice, big, beautiful park and having everything down there and might want to be dressed up, so that is the cost to do that.
Thank you. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Resolution number 58, 2022 passes.
Resolution number 59, 2022, authorizing the mayor as Director of Public Safety to participate in the state cooperative purchasing plan for the purchase of a new drawn Chief XL Ford F-550 4x4 diesel ambulance and declaring an emergency.
Move the resolution be taken up and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin for the passage of Resolution 59, 2022. Discussion? Mr. Gates.
Mayor, in my report from the Safety Committee, I had made brief reference to this. The fire chief is present, and he can talk better about this than, certainly than I can.
Chief, come forward, please.
First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Elgin for all the time he spent on the Civil Service Committees. I pick up all my papers. So, thank you for your service. Well appreciated. After the Safety Committee met, I received a phone call from Penn Care that they had a demo squad available. It is a little more, it's only 4.7% more, but that's also $18,000. The squad that we have ordered, we ordered it in April. It's projected to be here October of 2024. Is what they're telling. Originally it was supposed to be 600 days. Now it's 2.5 years, or over 2.5 years before we'll see it. The original squad price with our lift cot system is $358,363. This demo that they have, it's a 2022. They're projecting us to have it in March of 2023. So greatly shortened our time. It's an F-550, which is a bigger, stouter truck. With a power lift cot system, it's $376,403.20. The power lift cot system, with people being bigger and looking for ways to save our personnel, BWC will actually work with municipalities through a grant to cover the expenses for that. So I called BWC, we are eligible. In the past, I think we got the leaf vacuum came off of that, and also a hose roller. So I'm gonna work with BWC, the grant isn't even open yet. So they said, well, the first thing we need to do is a site visit, and I said, how about next week? And they're like, you're serious? I said, I'm dead serious. So they're coming on Monday to pay us a visit, and hopefully that gets us a foot in the door. If for some reason that this would go, not go through, I'm not real sure. It's been a long time, been 5 years since we've done this grant. If it's too late, if it was, if it's passed and it's already ordered, our newest squad, 39, we could put it in that. So we wouldn't be out anything for the effort if we get the grant. So I'm trying to do what we can to help out with this purchase. Right now we have the 2019 squad and 2006 Type 3, which is the smaller one, 38. It's with us picking up on volume. This is one of the things that was one of my biggest concerns, is how much can we depend on 38. We want to keep it in the fleet for if we have if we get this demo, in case there's oil changes, tires, some type of problem, we can bring 38 up, it'll do fine for short term. One of the things we discussed at the Finance Committee was the fact that, hey, if we get this demo, we can drop the other squad. Councilman Martin brought up a real good point. From this month, we've still got 2 years before we'd even see it. So maybe wait and see how things shake out and cross that bridge. If we're in good shape, then we'll just drop it. We'll let it go. That's from the same manufacturer, it's still same seller. We bought 38, 39, and if this goes through, a third squad from them, so I think they'll work with us on that, no problem. So, that's in a nutshell. It'll be identical to 39, our bigger squad, on looks, except instead of a 450, it's on a 550, four-wheel drive, be lettered the same. And they said this is one of my big concerns, is having 2 real reliable squads to get this ball up and running. The guys have done a great job. They're stepping up. We've had very few hiccups so far. There's minor things we got to work out, a lot of minor details, but we're getting there, and I'm real proud of it. So if you guys have any questions, I've got, if you want to see, this is the demo, if you want me to pass it around.
Oh, Mr. Gates.
Mayor, this vehicle is a 2022 vehicle.
Yes.
The reason I ask is because there's, in the title and the third whereas paragraph and in section 1, the word new is used. I'm wondering if it might be more appropriate, and I want to give credit to Councilman Martin for pointing that out. I think it'd be more accurate if we used, instead of the word new, used 2022. So I will ask unanimous consent to make those 3 changes.
I've heard Councilman Gates, and if I'm understanding correctly, on each instance where the word new is used, we will strike that for in 2022.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
the intent of my unanimous consent request.
Are there any objections to that change? Mr.
I have a question. The contract said new, so do we need to, I know this is a question that I had with Chief, and he, at the time that we wrote the legislation, didn't know. So I don't know if we need to cross that on the contract or not to match.
Mr. Smart.
Well, let's take care of this initial motion, and I think we can probably just change out that new to 2022 as well in the contract. And then it all matches, and if they consider it new, if they consider it a demo, I mean, essentially we're gonna get the same vehicle, I hope so. Just making it make sense all the way through.
Mr.
Mayor, I'd
Gates.
like to clarify my unanimous consent request to include the document, emergency vehicle purchase agreement, the first line, Pencare Inc. sales to purchaser 2022, Braun Chief XL, so on. So it would be 4 instances of changing the word new to 2022.
All right. So that is the proposed, those are the proposed changes in 4 places to replace the word new with 2022, including the first page. Are there any objections to that, for those changes? All right, hearing no objections, they shall be so made. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Resolution number 58, 2000, I'm sorry, resolution 59, 2022 passes.
Resolution number 60, 2022, authorizing the mayor as Director of Public Safety of the City of Shelby to apply for the fiscal year 23 Marks Multi-Agency Radio Communication System grant from the Ohio Department of Commerce, Division of State Fire Marshal, for Marks radio equipment fees and declaring emergency.
Move the resolution be taken up and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin for the passage of resolution number 60, 2022. Discussion. Mr. Gates.
Mayor, would the fire chief enlighten us on this?
That's kind of why I waited. I was like, no point sitting down. The March system's been great. We haven't had very little issues. Of course, there is user fees. This is an attempt to get back some of our user fees. It's a shot. Last year, when we went to the March, Richland County was told that every year you apply for this, we'll help you out with user fees, and that lasted like half a year when the new fire marshal came in. So, it's out there again. Figure what the heck, we'll apply, see if we'll help out a little bit. Again, we try to look for any ways to help out with whatever we can, bring some money in. So, we've asked for this in the past. Last year we didn't get anything. All of Richland County didn't get anything. And we had a little meeting about that with the marshal's office at a fire chief's meeting. So, with Richland County. So we'll see what happens this year. Worth a shot.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
And
Any further?
I did, you can see in my note, that we've had a little bit going on here lately. So there were some things where I need to add, that changes nothing with the dollar amount, just informational, run volume, that kind of stuff. Pretty easy.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yeah.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Resolution number 60, 2022 passes.
Resolution number 61, 2022, approving the plans and authorizing the mayor as director of public service to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the Broadway sanitary sewer replacement project.
Move the resolution be taken and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. McLaughlin for the passage of resolution number 61, 2022. Discussion. Mr. Gates.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the project that we applied for with our Public Works Commission funds. So half of that will be paid for the PWC funds. Section of Broadway that our service crews have been having a number of issues with, keeping it clean. The sewer backs up into some of the residents' basements at times, so this will hopefully resolve that issue.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yeah.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Resolution number 61, 2022 passes. Now come to miscellaneous business. Is there any miscellaneous business to be brought before council? Mr. Gates.
Mayor, I move council adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin for adjournment. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yeah.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Motion passes. Council adjourns at 8:22. Thank you, gentlemen.
Figured it out.
Well,
Figured it out.
Oh,